the darkest reaches of Appalachia, there are valleys the maps forgot, hollows where the trees seem older than time itself, and places where no birds sing. One such hollow is remembered only in whispers, Hale Hollow. The name alone carries unease, because those who ventured there often never came back, and those who did spoke of things they wished they'd never seen. The Hales were never a large family. They didn't build sprawling estates like the Carters, or fill mountainside caves like the Harpers. No, the Hales specialized in one thing: silence. They existed in shadows, concealed in cabins sunken into the earth. So well hidden, you could walk directly above them and never know. It was said they chose this life to disappear from the world, but the world couldn't ignore the trail of vanished travelers left in their wake. The first reports trace back to the 1890s, when trappers began going missing along the ridges near the hollow. At first, locals blamed wild animals. Bears, cougars, wolves. Appalachia was thick with predators. But predators leave tracks. They leave signs of struggle. In Hale Hollow, there was nothing. Campsites were found neatly packed, rifles resting against trees, food untouched. It was as if the men simply walked away and never returned. By the 1930s, stories of the Hales spread beyond the region. Entire hunting parties vanished, swallowed by the forest. In one infamous case, 3 men entered the hollow on a Sunday morning and were never seen again. A search party combed the woods for weeks. The only clue was a single boot, half buried in the mud, deep crescent-shaped teeth marks gouged into its leathered out. It was then that whispers of the Hales turned darker. Locals claimed the family was not just reclusive, they were hunters themselves, a bloodline so tangled by inbreeding that most children were born misshapen, pale, and, most disturbingly, mute. Unable to speak, they had developed their own eerie language of clicks, whistles, and guttural hums. People swore you could hear these noises echoing through the woods at night, bouncing between trees like the forest itself was speaking. Those sounds were always followed by silence and, then by someone disappearing. The Hales' deformities were legendary. Some said their eyes were milky white, reflecting torchlight like an animal's. Others swore their jaws were unnaturally wide, teeth sharp and jagged from years of gnawing bone. A few claimed their hands were bent, fingers too long, curling like roots. But the most chilling detail wasn't how they looked, it was how they lived. Instead of homes above ground, the Hales built their dwellings beneath it. Cabins sunk halfway into the earth, roofs covered in moss, chimneys disguised as tree stumps. To an outsider, Hale Hollow looked like untouched wilderness. But beneath the ground lay a network of dugouts, crawl spaces, and tunnels linking the family together in their silent world. Travelers who wandered too far were said to be pulled under, dragged into the soil itself, their screams muffled before they ever reached the air. One of the few documented encounters came from a logger named Samuel Yates in 1942. He claimed to have stumbled upon a Hale cabin hidden under a ridge. At first, he thought it was abandoned, just a mound of moss with a crooked door. But when he peered inside, he saw shelves lined with jars of cloudy liquid, each containing what looked like human remains, teeth, fingers, even whole eyeballs floating in brine. In the corner of the room sat a figure, unmoving, its face pale and featureless except for a mouth that seemed far too wide. When it began to stand, Yates fled. He never returned to the hollow. The Hales were not known to leave their land often, but their presence was felt in the surrounding towns. Farmers spoke of finding livestock drained of blood, bones scattered neatly in patterns. Hikers returned with strange symbols scratched into their tent spirals, crosses, and crude stick figures. In one chilling tale, a family traveling through the region in the 1950s reported waking to the sound of clicks and whistles circling their campsite. When they lit their lantern, they found dozens of handprints in the dirt surrounding them, small, deformed, and claw-like. They fled before dawn, never stopping until they were miles away. Unlike other clans who craved dominance or expansion, the Hales sought only to erase. Their legacy wasn't one of loud terror or open brutality, it was one of absence. They were the silence after the scream, the empty tent in the morning, the missing person poster that never found closure. Locals believed they worshipped the concept of disappearance itself, honoring it as a gift. The fewer outsiders who knew of them, the safer their bloodline remained. But such secrecy only fueled their myth. By the mid-20th century, Hale Hollow was considered cursed ground. Hunters avoided it. Hikers skipped its trails. Even moonshiners refused to set up stills there, and that says a lot. For all its beauty, Appalachia has always had places best left alone, and Hale was at the top of that list. Yet even as people avoided it, the stories persisted. A fisherman vanishing by the riverbank, his line still in the water. A mail carrier who never finished his route, his satchel found in the mud. A group of children who wandered too close and returned days later, unable to speak, their mouths filled with dirt and their eyes empty. Each tale pointed to one conclusion. The Hales were still there, lurking beneath the earth, waiting for the next unlucky soul to stumble into their silent kingdom. And if the stories are true, Hale Hollow isn't just a forgotten valley. It's a trap, a place where the ground itself swallows you, and the family who lives beneath it never lets you go. Asterisk, by the 1960s, the Hale bloodline had transformed from a whispered rumor into a full-blown Appalachian nightmare. Where other clans were known for brutality or open violence, the Hales instilled dread through their silence. They did not announce themselves with howls or hymns, nor did they parade through their land. Instead, they let their presence be known through absence, through the chilling void left behind when someone vanished without a sound. Locals swore the Hales had perfected the art of hunting people, unlike animals, which struggle and leave signs of the kill. The Hales took their prey in silence. Victims were rarely heard, rarely seen. A group of hikers might sit by a fire, swapping stories, only to glance over and realize one of their friends was gone. No scream, no rustle, no warning, just gone. Later, they might find a trail of small, warped footprints in the mud, leading nowhere. Sometimes, they found nothing at all. Survivors who made it out told stories that sounded more like nightmares than reality. One miner who wandered too close to Hale Hollow claimed he was dragged into a crawl space beneath the roots of a massive oak tree. Inside, he found himself in a cramped earthen chamber, walls lined with human bones stacked like firewood. Dozens of pale figures crouched in the dark, watching him. They did not speak. They did not move. They only made clicking noises with their tongues and teeth, echoing through the chamber until it felt like the sound was inside his skull. Somehow, he escaped, but he was never the same. He drank himself to death within a year, rambling about faces in the dirt. The Hales' rituals, if they could be called that, centered around this silence. Some say they worshipped the earth itself, believing that by burying themselves and their homes beneath it, they became part of it. Outsiders taken into their world were offered to the soil, forced into pits, smothered in mud, or left to rot in underground chambers where roots crept over their bodies like shrouds. A few bodies were covered near the hollow bore signs of being buried alive, dirt packed in their throats, nails ripped from clawing against the soil. The strangest detail was the Hales' supposed fixation on tongues. Survivors spoke of mutilations, where tongues were cut out and displayed, strung together on threads like macabre garlands. Some believed the Hales removed tongues to silence outsiders forever, preventing them from spreading tales of what they had seen. Others thought it was a ritual offering, a tribute to the silence they worshipped. But the Hales did not only target wanderers. There are records quietly buried in county archives of whole families who vanished after moving too close to the hollow. In 1973, A farmer named Robert Ellis purchased land just 2 miles from Hale territory. Within weeks, neighbors noticed strange noises around his property, clicks and whistles in the night, livestock mutilated in patterns that looked deliberate. One evening, Ellis's home was found abandoned. Food was still on the table. Chairs were pulled away, as if people had risen mid-meal. The family's dog was found tied to a post, whining, its fur soaked with mud, of the Ellis family themselves. No trace was ever found. Law enforcement occasionally tried to investigate, but the hollow seemed to resist intrusion. Deputies who entered often grew disoriented, unable to retrace their steps. Radios went dead. Compasses spun aimlessly. Some men returned, pale and shaking, unable to explain why they fled. Others never came back at all. Official reports chalked it up to rugged terrain, but locals knew better. They said the forest itself belonged to the Hales, that the family had dug tunnels and traps beneath it, creating an underground maze that outsiders could never escape. There are whispers of something even darker, that the Hales were not merely inbred cannibals, but practitioners of a twisted form of communion. According to local folklore, the Hales believed consuming flesh was a way of erasing identity. By devouring someone, they erased their existence, removing them from history. This was why so many who vanished near Hale Hollow left no remains, because the Hales didn't just kill, they erased. One of the most chilling accounts came from a schoolteacher named Martha Clay in 1981. While driving through back roads near the hollow, her car broke down. As night fell, she swore she saw figures emerging from the tree line. They were small, stooped, their eyes catching the moonlight. She locked her doors and waited, but the figures surrounded her car, tapping softly against the glass with long, crooked fingers. Then they began to whistle low, eerie tones rising and falling together. Martha fainted, and when she woke, it was morning. Her car was untouched. She drove home and never spoke of it publicly, though in private letters she confessed she believed. The Hales had chosen to let her live, if only to carry their legend forward. By the end of the 20th century, Hale was nearly erased from maps. Trails leading into it grew over, dirt roads washed away by floods, and yet the stories continued. Some said the Hales had dwindled to only a handful of members, living deep in burrows, waiting. Others claimed they had spread, embedding themselves in small Appalachian towns under false names, speaking little, living quietly, but always watching. What makes the Hale bloodline so terrifying is that they were never loud. They never announced themselves, like other clans. They did not chant, did not sing, did not howl. They whispered in whistles, they spoke in clicks, and they dragged people into the earth without a sound. They were a family defined not by what they did, but by what they took away. And the more you listen to their story, the more you begin to notice silence yourself. The absence of birdsong in certain woods. The quiet that falls too quickly when you step off a trail. The feeling of being watched, even when you hear nothing at all. Because the Hales were never about spectacle. They were about vanishing. And their silence still lingers, echoing through Appalachia, waiting for the next person who dares to enter their hollow and leave it empty-handed. Asterisk, by the 1990s, Hale Hollow had become more than just a name on the lips of superstitious locals. It was a scar on Appalachia's folklore. But unlike other bloodlines, whose tales grew more theatrical with time, the Hales remained defined by one thing: silence. Their story wasn't kept alive through legends shouted at campfires or boogeyman tales passed down to children. It endured through absence, through the haunting reality that people were still vanishing, even in modern times, and no one could explain why. The last official sighting of the Hale family came in 1994, when 2 surveyors working on an abandoned coal tract reported stumbling across an odd depression in the earth. When they investigated, they found what appeared to be the roof of a cabin buried beneath moss, with a crooked chimney rising like a dead tree stump. They approached cautiously, but before they could enter, they heard a low series of whistles. rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. A moment later, they felt the ground shift beneath their feet. Terrified, they fled. When they returned with backup the next day, the structure had collapsed entirely, swallowed into the soil, leaving no trace. What makes the Hales particularly disturbing is how their legend continued to evolve. By the 2000s, urban explorers and amateur paranormal investigators began to seek out Hale Hollow, armed with cameras and bravado. Some posted eerie footage online, recordings of strange clicking sounds at night, glowing eyes caught in flashlights, and, most unsettling of all, long human-like fingers reaching briefly into view before vanishing. A few explorers went missing entirely, their social media accounts frozen in time, their last uploads abruptly cut off mid-sentence. The strangest reports in modern years don't come from deep inside the hollow, but from the towns around it. Some locals whispered that the Hales never died out, they simply learned to blend in. They aren't the wild, feral creatures of legend anymore. Instead, they walk among us, silent and watchful. A pale man who never speaks at the grocery store. A family that keeps to themselves on the edge of town. Children who never attend school. A woman who hums in low guttural tones while she shops, never making eye contact. To outsiders, they're just odd. To locals, they are unmistakably Hale. In 2011, a chilling story surfaced in a nearby county. A group of friends camped along the edge of the hollow, joking about the Hale legends, when they heard whistling in the distance. At first, they laughed it off, imitating the sounds. But as the night dragged on, the whistling grew louder, closer, until it surrounded them. When they shined their flashlights into the woods, they saw dozens of pale faces staring back, unblinking. The group panicked and fled, abandoning their gear. When authorities investigated, they found the campsite untouched, except for a crude spiral of bones laid in the fire pit, each one gnawed clean. Perhaps the most unsettling encounter came just a few years ago. In 2018, a hiker posted on a forum describing how he got lost in the forest and stumbled upon what looked like a sinkhole. Inside it, he saw what appeared to be a human figure, crouched low, its back hunched, its skin ghostly pale. It did not speak, but it clicked its teeth together, tilting its head as if studying him. Terrified, he backed away, but the figure never moved. Later, when he returned with others, the sinkhole had collapsed, leaving nothing but a patch of disturbed soil. His post went viral, and then he vanished. His account was deleted. His friends reported him missing. His body has never been found. These modern tales have given rise to a chilling theory that the Hales are not just surviving but thriving, using their silence to slip unnoticed into the modern world, while other Appalachian clans burned themselves out through violence or exposure. The Hales adapted. They no longer need to defend Hale Hollow, because Hale Hollow is no longer their only home. They've scattered, they've multiplied, and if they are indeed still alive, then they could be anywhere, living in the cracks of small towns, nesting in abandoned mines, or even beneath our feet. In tunnels no one dares to map. What keeps the Hale legend alive isn't the bloodshed or gore, it's the suggestion that they are still out there, listening. Because if you walk too deep into Appalachia, you might notice something strange. The forest goes quiet, the birds stop singing, the wind dies down, and then, faintly, you hear it, a series of clicks, a low whistle carried on the breeze, and that's when you know you're not alone. The Hales don't need to frighten you with howls or chase you with screams. They only need to wait, to surround you in silence, to drag you into the earth, where no one will ever hear you again. So the next time you find yourself in the mountains, take note of the silence. If it feels unnatural, if it presses in on you like a weight, turn back. Run if you can, because silence in Appalachia doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes, it means the Hales are near, and if they are, you won't hear the last sound you make. If you thought the Hale bloodline was terrifying, you haven't seen anything yet. The Hales taught us that sometimes silence is the loudest horror of all. But they are only one piece of Appalachia's darkest puzzle. Would you dare to step deeper into these mountains with me? Because in the next story, we uncover another family whose evil didn't just lurk in the shadows, it thrived in plain sight. So if you want more of Appalachia's most twisted legends, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment below. Would you survive a night in Hale Hollow, or would the silence take you too? And remember, out here in Appalachia, the darkness isn't just history, it's waiting.